I'm Timothy Quick, and I will be doing an interview of Mr. Martinez today. We are in Rome Free Academy on May 4th, 2001. Mr. Martinez served in the United States Army Infantry Division and was involved in the Vietnam War. Alright, thank you, Mr. Martinez, for your time today. Just wanted to jump right in with the questions. Could you please tell us when did you join the military?
I was drafted in the military June 16th, 1969. On Friday, I was teaching school. I was an art teacher at Staley. And Monday morning, I was in the Army training at Fort Dix, New Jersey. And that training went on for 8 weeks. And then from there, I didn't come home. They shipped us directly to Fort Lewis, Washington, in the state of Washington. And I went to advanced infantry training. And at the time, I was 24 years old and college graduate, and it seemed to be at that time, if you were a college graduate and did not wear glasses, which I didn't at the time, you went into the infantry, and if you were a college graduate and wore glasses, you went into the artillery. I say I'm with a good friend of mine from Rome that I went into the service with. So he went into artillery, and I went into the infantry.
Okay. When you joined up with the military, do you remember the situation in the world, like around you, like what was actually going on at that time?
All I can remember at the time is excuse me, when it all started that I got drafted, I was going to school. I was in the University of Tampa, and I graduated from the university. As a matter of fact, the same day I got my grades in the mail, I got my draft notice. So when I graduated, I was offered a job with Sears, Roebuck and Company as an executive trainee program that they had, and Moss Brothers, which was a department store chain in Florida, and I was offered a job to go train with them. However, since I was drafted, I had to come back home, and I had to go for my physical, and that was in March. I graduated from college in February. I had gone to junior college, and I had to make up certain hours, so that's why I went an extra semester. But anyway, I came home in February, and I wasn't going into the service right away, so I started teaching, substitute teaching. And I found that I really enjoyed that and liked it. And as a matter of fact, they offered me a job, but it was too late. I had already been drafted, so that took care of that. So I was drafted right out of while I was teaching there. And as far as going on around the world, I was very conscious of what was going on with Vietnam and that. I mean, we'd always been aware of that. I remember back in 1964 when some friends of mine, we went horseback riding at Mahakwa Farms out in the valley. And we were driving home, it was August, and we heard on the news about the Gulf of Tonkin, which actually got us involved deeply in the Vietnam War. And at the time, I remember a cold chill going down my back, and I was like 19 years old at the time. And at the time, I never thought that I would ever get involved in anything. And I remember when I was in college, reading about Vietnam, the war was going on, but I figured by the time I get out of college, it'll be all done. And at that time, if you were 2S, which was student deferment, you had at least 4 years that they would defer you. And I was lucky I got an extra half a year because when I transferred, as I said, from junior college to university, I had to take extra courses to make up for the requirements. And they gave me that extra semester. But after that, the time was up, so I went to 1A, and so I was drafted.
Okay. You mentioned that you served as an infantryman. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about the training. Did you have any special training or duties for your position?
First, you had like 8 weeks of basic training where basically they whip you into shape and turn you from a civilian into a soldier. You need to understand that you're coming from civilian life, doing everything you want to do when you want to do it is quite different from being in the military. And so they had to change all that because your life depends on it. When someone says duck, you don't say why. You duck, otherwise you could be dead. And and being civilians, we question everything, which is wonderful, but in the military situation, it's much different. So anyway, we had 8 weeks of basic training, teaching you to be a soldier, getting you physically fit. At the time, I weighed about 193 pounds. 3 weeks later, I weighed 173 pounds. I lost 20 pounds in 3 weeks. And I remember before we went into the service, another friend of mine, Tony Spinelli from Rome here, he graduated in '64. we made a big joke, we're going to the spa and we're going to lose weight and we're going to get in shape, and we did. I mean, I was running 5 miles through sand, full pack, best shape I ever was in. But, and it was hot, it was the summer, down in Fort Dix, New Jersey, talking June, July, August, so we're talking about the heat and humidity that is really stifling. But anyway, we went through that physical training, training in military drills and military law, somewhat basic skills in the military. And then after that, we went to Fort Lewis, which was advanced infantry training. And that was where we trained in all kinds of weapons. You learned to use the M16, you used the M60 machine gun, the 50 caliber machine gun, the M79, I'm not sure what, if it was the rocket launcher, the M72 grenade launcher, and you had to be able to use these, take them apart like blindfolded, so that if you're in the field, you'd have to be able to do whatever needed, hopefully to get it to work again. You had training with explosives, you had training with search, or not search, what was the last major training we had? It was trying to evade the enemy. It was one of the last training situations we had. They had a Viet Cong village set up, and you went through there. They had the tunnels. I don't know if you heard about the tunnels that they used throughout Vietnam. They had the Vietnamese and the Viet Cong they had built them from back in the 40s when they were fighting against the French and all the way through. So they had a network of tunnels that they had, and certain soldiers were known as tunnel rats. That's when you didn't want to be too small, because these guys had to go down into these tunnels looking for the enemy. And of course down there they'd have traps, they'd have snakes down there. I mean, it just was a horrifying thing to get into. But anyway, part of the training was a village like that, tunnels like that, and so you got a little feel of what it was like. And then we had this one last training where it was survival training, and you had to go through this area where the enemy was, and the sergeant that was there would explain that if you were caught, they put us like in these make-believe prison camps and give you like a torture, but nothing serious, but just to make you understand that you got caught, it's not going to be comfortable. And one of the things they did was, they came out there and they had a rabbit. They were going to make rabbit stew, so if you're out in the field, you haven't got anything, you find an old can, because American GIs, being Americans, we used to leave our trash all around, which was something you learned that you didn't do because they left the trail. But anyway, he took this rabbit in front of us, a live rabbit, killed it, skinned it, gutted it, took the heart out, threw it in his mouth, and he ate it. Like, we were all, couldn't believe it. But, you know, if you want to survive, this is what you have to do. And they're trying to get you ready because people are going to try to kill you. And everything you're doing, your training, is kill, kill, kill. Kill, kill, kill. Because it's either that or you could be killed. So they're trying to get you into this mode to be prepared for that. Anyway, you had to go through this escape and evasion was what it was called. And you had to go through, so then they were enemy soldiers out there. Of course, they were our guys dressed as the enemy. But I remember that night we were out there and we were getting close. And if you did get caught, you weren't going to get your pass that weekend. So that was a motivator also not to get caught. So the group I was with, we worked our way through the woods and we came upon a squad of the enemy. And we got down, and we were getting down on the ground. It was October. This is in the state of Washington, so it was nice. The leaves were on the ground and everything. And I remember just getting like a horizontal like this and just putting myself like this. And we had like dark rain gear, because I think it had rained that day. And just laid there still while these people, they were like walking right next to you around. And made believe like you were a log, and they just walked by and we got away. And this is what saved us in this training exercise, and something that might train you if you ever were, you know, in an enemy situation. I mean, you didn't even want to breathe. And once again, our motivation was you didn't want to go through the torture and humiliation of how you got caught, and we wanted our pass for the weekend. Anyway, I made it through and we didn't get caught, so I was fortunate. But everything we were doing was preparing you for, you know, war when you went over there, because that's what it was. And people do kill, you know, and that's what they were trying to do. It was just, when you got there, it was unbelievable.
Once you had gone through the different training sessions in Fort Dix and Fort Lewis, where were you stationed?
Right to Vietnam.
Right to Vietnam?
So after I got finished with Fort Lewis, they gave me a 2-week vacation, leave, and I came home. And the part that hurts was, since Fort Lewis was going to be my debarkation point where I was going to leave the United States to go to Vietnam, the Army wouldn't pay for my trip back home. So I had to go to the Red Cross and borrow a couple $100, I think it was like $200 at the time to get a round-trip flight from Seattle, Washington, back to Rome and back. So anyway, so I came back home for 2 weeks, and then I flew back to Seattle, and we shipped out from Seattle. And when we left there, we left like at, it was 10:30 at night or something, and we arrived in Vietnam like 10:30 at night, almost 24 hours later. The flight was like 20 or 24 hours. We flew from Seattle, Washington to Yokota, Japan, and then from Yokota, Japan to Vietnam. Ranh Bay is where I landed. And there they started processing you and shipping you different places in the country. You were there for a while, and you pulled guard duty. I mean, every place you went, you always pulled guard duty. It made a difference what your job was. You're always going to do guard duty, something like that to protect your perimeter. Because in Vietnam, it wasn't like in World War I or World War II where you had a front line and you move forward. It was more like the Old West. You know, I don't know if you ever saw the old Western movies where you circle the wagons. Well, in Vietnam, you had camps, base camps, bases, something like Griffiths Air Force Base was like, you know, large areas. But you had a perimeter around it, and that's really how you protected yourself. And during the day, pretty much the country, the area belonged to us, and at night, you had your area, and the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese were out there doing their thing. And the difficult part about it being in Vietnam is that a lot of the Vietnamese people would be working for the government during the day. You'd be working side by side with them. They'd be working at a PX or doing your laundry or something. And at night, they'd be carrying rockets for the Viet Cong. You don't know where their sympathies lie, you know, and that was something you had to deal with.
At this point in your situation when you had been shipped over finally to Vietnam, could you describe, do you remember how you were feeling, like your thoughts at the time? Were you still opposed to the war? Or?
I wasn't really opposed to it. I wasn't for the war, but my feeling was my country called, I was going to go. I didn't like the idea. I'm no hero or anything like that, but if my country called, I was going to go and I was going to serve. And I can remember I was scared to death. There's no two ways about it. I don't care all the training in the world. You know, you go there and you're in a war zone, you're scared. And I remember the first couple of days I went, I was like crying like a baby, you know, feeling sorry for myself. And there's a lot of us in the same boat, you know, because here you are in this situation, and who knows what's going to happen. So anyways, they shipped me out from Ranh Bay. They shipped me to the 1st Infantry Division. It's known as the Big Red One. If you're going to be one, be a Big Red One. No mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. And the 1st Division was one of the first divisions that went to in World War I, and they were very instrumental in, I think it was on the beaches in Normandy in World War II. So it had quite a tradition. When I saw those things, I said, oh my God, these guys are crazy, you know. But anyway, I got down there, and I was trained infantry, and went out on a few patrols and stuff, you know, nothing serious. But I remember, like, you know, when you see in the war movies the guys going through the water with their rifle up above, well, we were doing this, and seeing the snakes go through the water. I hate snakes. That was my biggest fear, snakes, more than getting shot. And I tell you, I just hated that. Luckily, I was very fortunate. I mean, my luck was unbelievable when I got to Vietnam. But anyway, so we went on a few patrols. I was very lucky, very fortunate, never got shot or anything. And while I was there, for a year, I had been writing to a friend of mine, Neil Ripley. And he and I went to school here at RFA, graduated in 1963 with me. And I looked at the APO number, which is like a post office box number, and it was the same number that was on the base that I was at. This was Zion, was the name of the base I went to, where the 1st Infantry Division was working out of. And so anyway, I asked the guy, is this unit here, because I had his unit name. He goes, yeah. So I said, geez, is there any way I can get there? He goes, well, yeah, this sergeant's here, he can take you right over. So I went over to this unit, and here's my buddy. There's 550,000 guys in Vietnam. You understand this? And this is where my friend, I'm talking about, you know, like your best friend in high school. This is my, you know, one of my best friends. And he's there, and I go in there, and I go, hey, Ripley, what are you doing? He goes, what are you doing here? How can this be? You know, it was like unbelievable. So, needless to say, we took a Jeep, went out, and we got drunk, you know, like two drunken fools. But we had a great time. I got to see him there. And then they were, first time they were finally, this is where my luck started, they were screening records. So they were looking at what qualifications you had. And they looked, they saw I was a college graduate, had a degree in business administration and so forth. So they needed a typist, right? So, okay, I'll do anything better than be out there in the boonies, you know. So I went in and had to take this test. I took a typing test, and we were with the sergeant major, and I passed that test, and I had to go to the lieutenant, and then I went to the major, and then I passed through all those tests and interviews, and they said, okay, well now we're going to send you up to Lai K, which is another base camp farther up north, which was in the Michelin rubber plantation. Beautiful place. Vietnam was a beautiful country, beautiful country. And so they flew me up there, and I had to go through the same thing. I had to go through an interview with the sergeant major, a captain, another major, all this stuff. Finally, I get to the lieutenant colonel. He's the head of this G1 at division headquarters. So we go in there, sit down, greet him, and I go, soldier, where are you from? I said, well, sir, I'm from Rome, New York. Rome, New York? I'm from Utica. You got the job, whatever it is. I go, but, he said, if you made it this far, I know you can do the work, you got the job. So I ended up being a clerk typist personnel specialist at division headquarters for the 1st Infantry Division. And, which was nice because I lived in a tent, and I didn't live out under the stars. And I worked in the base camp, and I pulled guard duty. You know, everyone pulls guard duty, as I said earlier. We came under attack, rocket attack, artillery attack. I mean, but after that, I didn't have to go out in the boonies anymore on patrols. So that was like just a big coup. That was just wonderful. And then, that was for 6 months, and then Nixon had the Vietnamization of the war, and they were going to slowly take the United States out of the war. It was a very slow process. But the 1st Infantry Division was going to come home. Well, I had been in the country from November, and this was around March or April, whatever it was, and I only had 6 months in country, so they weren't going to send me home. The 1st Infantry Division was going home. The colors of the 1st Infantry Division, anyone that had been in country maybe 8, 9 months or more would go home, because your tour of duty, I don't think I mentioned this, was 1 year. So I had to go somewhere else, and I'm still, my MOS, which is Military Occupational Specialty, was 11 Bravo, which was infantryman. So I still had that there. My secondary MOS was clerk typist and personnel specialist. So my colonel gets on the phone, because I got my orders, I was going to the AmeriCal Division. And the AmeriCal Division, as I've mentioned to you before, is where the My Lai incident took place, the My Lai Massacre. So anyway, my colonel called up, and he's talking on the phone to the colonel up there, and he says, I have PFC Martinez here, you know, that's the Spanish pronunciation of my name, and he's been working here, doing a great job at G1, and I wonder if you have any openings for him. And the next thing I know is my colonel, Wevesynski, from Utica, New York, gets off the phone and tells me, PFC Martinez, Colonel Fernandez wants you to be on the general's plane, and you're going up to AmeriCal Division. You work for G1, division headquarters, doing the same job you did here in the AmeriCal Division. So, I mean, talking about luck rolling with you, I mean, it was unbelievable. I just left there, went up, flew on the general's plane, General Malloy it was. Went up there, processed it, and I got the exact same job there that I had in the 1st Infantry Division. And once again, you know, you pulled your guard duty and stuff, and you came under attack, but that was just like part of everyday life. But once again, I didn't have to go out in the boonies anymore, go out on any more patrols, so that was just wonderful. And we worked with the Red Cross girls, call them girls, they were women, but you know, and they used to go out to visit the troops, and one of my jobs was driving them, like I don't know if you ever watched MASH, where the guys were in the old Jeeps. I used to drive the Jeep, drive the Red Cross girls out there, and wait for them while they entertained the troops and so forth. So it was, I was very, very, very fortunate. And I worked there until the end of my tour. I went to Taipei, Formosa, for my R&R, rest and relaxation. Of course, we had another name for it. I won't mention that, but it was, you know, it was quite an experience doing that. And then while I was in the AmeriCal Division, that buddy of mine, Tony Spinelli, I mentioned, they went into the artillery. I had been writing to him. And he was up in the area where I was with the AmeriCal Division. And so we got in contact, and he came in, and he and I went in R&R together. So here's my buddy from Rome, New York, that he went through basic training with, and then he went to artillery, I went to infantry. We met up again, and we went on R&R together from Vietnam to Taipei. And while I was there was another friend of mine from Rome, Fred Colicchia, and I never got to see him, but I got to be in contact with him, because for 3 months I did the job of an O3, which is a lieutenant. I did the lieutenant's job in G1 Division Headquarters because they didn't have anyone to fill the spot. So since I had the training as a civilian, I didn't have the rank, you know, but they gave me that position to do that, so I had to make all kinds of phone calls and everything all over the place, so I was able to get in touch with them. It's like the old days, you see them crank up the phones and you call, and Plantation 1, this is Locomotion 3, and you have all these codes and everything you send, so I was able to get in contact with him. So it was you know, quite interesting that way. Some other things I can't think of right now. But,
Okay. I was wondering, like, what kind of the situation that that you guys had, the American infantry, like, as far as the liberties you guys had, how well off you were as opposed to like
the
different
Vietnamese.
divisions? Yeah, the Vietnamese.
All right, so they had the Vietnamese Army. That was ours, then there was the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese Army. But the Vietnamese Army was the South Vietnamese. The thing that really irked us, the American GIs, was that we were there helping them, and we had all kinds of restrictions. You know, we couldn't leave our area. We had to have all kinds of passes and everything to go anywhere and do anything for the most part. And at night, many of them would just jump on their scooters, go home to their girlfriends and their wives, and they'd forget about the war. And here we're pulling security, doing all this stuff, and they're home having a good time. And we say, wait a minute, this is their war. We're helping them. Why are we taking on all this responsibility? That used to irritate us. Since it's been 30 years, I think I could talk about some of the things. I had top secret clearance, and in the My Lai Massacre, we had the files for what went on there, and they were under our jurisdiction, and we had the Senate committee and people from Congress came, and they were, you know, looking through all the records and stuff. And what you need to understand, I don't condone what happened. I don't condone killing women and children, just like this thing with Kerry today. What you need to understand is that you go into these villages, these are people that every day are supposedly your friend, and they're working with the enemy. You go into a village, you're being shot at all the time, you can't shoot at them. They attack you, you can't attack them. It gets very frustrating, and that's what I think happened to a lot of these incidents that happened. Well, I don't think that most Americans or anyone goes out to murder men, women, and children. Thank God I never was in that situation where I had to do that. But from what I had seen and the people I had spoke with, the records I had seen, we had villages where you'd be in a combat situation, there'd be a battle going on, and you blow up the village chief's house, and some of his trees are hurt or destroyed, and they were sending us bills to rebuild these things. You know, like this was destroyed, that was destroyed, and they'd be sending us bills, and we had to pay them for repairing these things. I mean, we're here helping you, and you're sending us bills to pay this stuff off. It was like, just unbelievable. And another thing, like, you get little kids, what do little kids know? I mean, if someone says, here, we're going to give you $20 or $10, go bring this thing to the GI, and they might not even know what it was, an explosive, whatever, or shoot at these GIs. And what do? Some woman or someone takes a gun and starts shooting at you. What do? You know? It's a very, very, very difficult situation to be put in. And they were very innovative. And one of the things that they did, like for booby traps, simple little booby trap, GIs, like I said, had a bad habit of leaving their soda cans, beer cans, and things around. What they would do is take out the top of the beer can, take a hand grenade, pull the pin on the hand grenade, you push the hand grenade inside the can, so the lever can't release. Put on fishing line, tie it to the handle, tie it across the trail, you come bopping along, you hit the fishing line, pulls out the hand grenade, and it blows up, and, you know, and you're gone. Simple little things like that. They were very, very good to use what we had against us. And these guys run around in their pajamas and sandals through the woods, and we had all this combat gear and everything. But this was their area, their country, and many of them were against the war. A lot of them were for the war. But it was just one of those things. You were caught in between.
You mentioned a while ago people like the corporal from Utica, or lieutenant, what was it?
Lieutenant Colonel.
Lieutenant Colonel. And your friend Spinelli and all
Tony
those.
Spinelli. Yeah.
I was wondering, are there any people in particular that stick out in your mind that had a great impact on you while you were there, or is it those people, or?
Yeah, those were some people, that Colonel especially, because of, what happened, the situation, and he was real down-to-earth guy. And it's different. It's like there's always a pecking order, even when you're in the service. Like, of course, we lived in tents. Lieutenants lived in tents. If you were a major, you lived like in these trucks and so forth. But Lieutenant Colonel lived in a trailer, like a big, beautiful trailer, because one day he had to go over to his trailer to get something, and it was going into this big, gorgeous trailer. Here you are in the middle of the jungle, in the middle of combat zone, and he's living in a trailer. And then, of course, if you were a general, they lived in these beautiful villas. And it was just kind of unique the way their place was. There were some, I can't remember the name of this one particular lieutenant, but once again, in the military, like I said, there's a pecking order, and we all know our ranks and where we are. But once again, you're a lieutenant, so I'm a sergeant, or I'm a PFC, whatever it is. I got a college degree, you have a college degree. I respect you as a lieutenant, and I'm a PFC, you respect me as a PFC. But sometimes some of these lieutenants, they came in, one of them in particular, I can't remember his name, maybe I don't want to anymore. But anyway, he came in and just thought who he was. We did everything, we did our job, but he just was an SOB. He just made your life miserable. So I had been there a long time before he had been. I had done the job he was doing, the 03 lieutenant's job. So we were having an IG inspection, which is Inspection General. Inspector General comes in, and they want to check everything to make sure it's the way it should be. And so, like I said, we had top secret files. And so they came, the inspection was coming up, and this guy said, Sergeant Martinez, what are we going to do? I don't know, sir. I'm a sergeant, sir. He goes, yeah, well, you did this before. Yes, sir. But I'm a sergeant, sir. You're a lieutenant. That's not my job. He goes, yeah, but I need help. I go, you don't need my help. You told me many times that I'm just a sergeant. You're a lieutenant, sir. Oh, I see. I said, well, do you see? I said, I don't mind helping. I could help you with my eyes closed. He said, I just want to be treated with a little bit of respect, too. I know you're a lieutenant. I know I'm a sergeant, but I don't expect to be treated like a peon or any of these other guys. And finally, you got the message through to him that, treat us with a little respect. We'll do anything for you. And so we helped him out, and we passed the inspection. But for some reason, some guys come, they get this authority, and power goes to his head, and he thought he was going to do whatever he wanted. And he could, to a degree, but afterwards, we didn't have to do what he needed to do. He needed us. So he learned a lesson, I think, in that. So that was rather interesting.
Did you have any experiences out of the ordinary? Obviously the whole war in general can be assumed to be out of the ordinary.
Like I said, the lucked out, that was out of the ordinary. The only thing, the closest I came to meeting my maker was May 5th, 1970. I was pulling guard duty, and I was inside the perimeter, but we still had guard duty, because if someone gets through the perimeter, or on one side of us was the South, where we were in the AmeriCal Division, one side was the South China Sea. And then out the other side, of course, was the rest of the country. And as I said before, it's just gorgeous. I'd love to go back there again and see it now. But anyway, that morning, we got hit by rocket fire. And what the Vietnamese, or the Viet Cong would do, North Vietnamese, is they didn't have a lot of sophisticated weaponry, but they had rockets. They would send them, or set them in the Y of a tree, and they'd leave them with detonators to go off after they had long gone. And so it was like, guard duty ended at 7 o'clock. I think it was like 6 a.m. All of a sudden, all hell broke loose. Rockets coming in, everything blowing up all over. Just like you see in the movies, or you saw Saving Private Ryan, that's what was happening. Things blowing up, fuel tanks blowing up, people blowing up all over. Never so scared in all my life. You go to run, you couldn't run. My legs were like jelly. Just couldn't move, like, for an instant. And then I was able to run, and I went into a bunker, and I took cover, and I was all right. But it was just amazing to see how everything was just blowing up all over. Guys were driving around in the Jeeps, just with their shorts on, picking up the dead and the wounded and things like that. It just was an unbelievable experience to see it up close like that. Had a few close calls being shot at and coming under attack, but nothing real severe, like I said, I was very fortunate compared to most, compared to a lot of them.
All right. Well, you explained before to us that you have received several medals and different things. Is there anything in particular you'd like to explain, like how you got or what for the medals?
Basically, the medals were for doing your job and working under a very difficult situation, but doing a good job, outstanding job, I guess. Your work day was the minimum of 12 hours a day. Then, if you weren't a soldier out in the field, there was something you did. Like we worked in G1 Division headquarters, administrative. It's amazing all the paperwork that goes on in the wars going on. And so we worked 12 hours a day, 7 days a week, and under all kinds of circumstances, under fire. So a lot of people got medals. It's no big deal. It's just a little bit of recognition, I guess, for doing a good job. But the one thing that one guy went over there with Richard Durant. We trained together. Basic training, and we went to AIT. He went into the mortars, and I was in the infantry. We went over there together. And then when you come back, everyone meets. And he didn't make it. This guy was 22 years old. He just had a baby. And he was shot out in the field, and they couldn't medevac him in. And he bled to death out there. Just so many terrible things that happen, and you see. And this guy was from Verona over here. The nicest guy you ever want to meet. And that was like one of the saddest things he had to deal with. But sorry.
It's okay. You mentioned the 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. Would you mind running us through, just so we can get an idea of like a normal day for you?
You get up about 6 o'clock, they'd have reveille, and you go out to salute the flag and all that stuff, and then you go to breakfast, and then you start working 7 o'clock. And you work normally like from 7 to 7 or so. And it was just, like, most of the time it was a regular job, but sometimes they took out, like I said, the Red Cross girls. That was a tough assignment there, Everyone was volunteering for that. And most of the time you're typing papers, shuffling papers, doing things like that. We get a lot of top secret messages that came in. We had to get that information out. We'd be dealing with information that would come from all the different sectors in the division. For example, every Monday was show and tell day, where all the numbers of the wounded in action, killed in action, missing in action, people in R&R would come in from all the companies, through the brigades, through division headquarters, and they tell the generals what was going on. Now, this is another thing, but it's been 30 years, so I guess I can say this. We used to get this information in, and there was this unbelievable formula we had to do to get the numbers. And when I got the numbers, and if they didn't like the numbers, they'd say I made a mistake. And I'd go through it again, have someone else check it, someone else check it. No, we're right. All of a sudden these numbers would disappear. The major would get those numbers, and those numbers would be changed. So those numbers that were going to our division headquarters were not accurate. And if this was going on throughout the entire country, that wasn't accurate. And then by the time they gathered all this information and sent it back to the states, who knows what kind of information they were getting. Because like you hear even now with Kerry about head count. That was another thing. How many did we kill? How many of our guys were killed? How many were missing? And if they didn't like those numbers, it seemed like they were doing something to change those numbers. I couldn't say for sure, but if they didn't like it, they would take it from me, and they said, well, we'll take a look at this. You know, so there's seemed to be some hanky-panky going on there to me, you know. But once again, you know, you have a certain position, you can only question so much, but, and at the time I couldn't say anything. But since it's been 30 years, I think I'm safe.
Yeah. Right, sort of just wrapping up, I was wondering, after the war, if you could, when you came home, if you could maybe explain, like, your mentality, how you felt about what you had been through.
When I came home, it was strange was going to come home because it wasn't like other wars where people greeted you like, you know, you did something good. It was more like you did something bad. And I didn't really feel I did anything bad. I lived there and I served my country and I did what I had to do, and I didn't feel I did anything wrong. But it just was, people greeted you like, you know, well, I remember some people coming home and going to El Chico, was one of my old watering holes. And the part that hurt me the most was, it was another guy was in the Army, but he was in the Army and he was in the band and he was in Washington. And, oh, you suckers, you went over there, he said, what'd you do, you know, you guys, who knows who you killed and all this stuff. And, you know, it just was very, very hurtful to think that your own fellow soldiers, in that case, and let alone your countrymen, thought that you went over there and it was for nothing. I think about that guy, Richard Durant, that I was telling you about that died there. I don't for an instant think he died for nothing. He was serving his country, he was called to serve, he did serve the best of his ability. I mean, he didn't make those decisions. We didn't make those decisions. What if we all did that? What if everyone said, we're not going to go? What would happen to the country? You know, what would you do? I mean, I'm not saying every time we do something that's right, but you have to like, be united in the military. And believe me, I didn't like the military. It wasn't my cup of tea. But you try to follow orders. You know, very important. You follow those orders. And like I said at the beginning, they say duck, you better duck because you could be dead. And that's part of the reason, you know. But otherwise, I came back, I think I adjusted pretty well. I went back to work and started my life, and been very happy. I've been, like I said, I've been very fortunate. I did all my graduate work, got most of it. I went back to Syracuse University, got my master's degree on the GI Bill. Took a lot of extra graduate work under the GI Bill, so that was very helpful to me. So I can't complain there.
Do you have any specific regrets or fond memories, final things you want to share, anything that sticks out in your mind?
But it's one of those things that when I went into the service, the Army, I didn't like it. And I still, I mean, I didn't like what I had to do, but I look back and it's like, it's still like a fond memory. It's something that stays with you, I think, forever, and the friends that you make there. In a very short period of time, you come so close to people you don't know and you never see again, for the most part. You try to keep contact, but it just doesn't seem to work that way. I think it's because you're all going through such a horrendous thing together, and you rely on each other. I mean, your life's relying on each other, you're in a combat zone, but even in training, you're like, it's like you against the drill sergeant. You know, once again, you all go there. Most of you aren't in any kind of shape. You don't know anything about the military. And these guys are pounding you into the ground. But, you know, as you reflect back, that's what they had to do. I mean, if you go there and you're not ready and you're not in shape to be in that situation, you're going to be in big trouble. So even though I didn't like the military per se, I liked what they did. And I believe very strongly you have to have the military. It's one of those necessary evils. If we want to be free and do all the things that we can do and protest and everything else that's out there, you know, you got to have someone to protect you. Otherwise, someone else will be glad to take over and tell you what to do.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. It was great. It was very interesting.
You're welcome.
Thanks a lot.
One here is the National Defense Medal. Everyone in the military gets that, I think, after you're in for 90 days or so. This was the Vietnamese Service Medal, and these are the ribbons. The ribbons that you'll see later are on the uniform represent the medals. These are the Bronze Star, 2 bronze stars. There's the Army Commendation Medal. There's 2 of those also, but I think I just had 1 here. And then these are the citations. This is the citation that goes with it, and then this is the commendation, the paperwork. And with each of those, I think somewhere here I had, there was the orders that states that you received those medals. And then underneath here, this is just, I got this in Vietnam, it was a headband
that you put around, put around your head to keep your hair back. Of course, it wasn't military issue, of course. And these were, like, back in the States, they had love beads, and so the Vietnamese were very innovative, and they came up with their own love beads, and that's what those are. This book here is just the like a yearbook, but only it's like 8 weeks of basic training. It's the book that they gave us, and I mentioned later, just shows some of the training you went through in Fort Dix. And then, as I said, with these pictures of the soldiers, when we took these pictures, we had been training all day, and we just have the top part of the dress uniform on. On the bottom were our fatigues. We were all sweaty. You can see, if you look closely, we hadn't shaved or anything, so it was a real quick deal to take those pictures, but they didn't come out bad when you consider what we were like and what we went through that day. And this was from the 1st Infantry Division. It was a citation that everyone got from them when we left the division. As you can see, no mission too difficult, no sacrifice too great, duty first. And when I saw that, I was really scared. But luckily, everything worked out. And it's just nothing. Then they had a map on the back of the 1st Division in the areas where I mentioned Lai K. That's one of the places I was. Zion, another place. And then after I came up north, and I ended up in Chu Lai. This is where the AmeriCal Division was. So I traveled throughout the whole country. And I didn't mention before, I forgot that one time I went on TDY, temporary duty, to Saigon. I had to go down and pick up the money to pay the civilians that worked for us. And I had to pick up like 25 million pesos or whatever, I can't remember what the money was. But anyway, it was something like $25,000. So you went down there with a 45 on your side, and I spent a couple days in Saigon to pick up the money and tour Saigon, and I got some pictures of that inside that album that I can show you in a minute here. And these, after you've run it, I'll leave you with, these are, like I said, like yearbooks of the 1st Infantry Division. Right, here's where, this is the tents we lived in here. See? These are some of the guys I was with when I was there. They're from, like I said, all over the country. And this tents were just like the ones you see in MASH, basically. And then, once again, here was Division 1 headquarters. You can see, I mean, this was all made out of concrete, so they did some serious work there. And then here was my desk where I was working for 1st Infantry Division, G1. And these are just some other, this is the way our area was set up. This is in the Michelin rubber plantation, a place called Lai K. And those are all the tents, once again, MASH style. And some of the helicopters that are around the area. This is Saigon. I was down there in Saigon when I went on TDY. This is all incense here. Large trees of incense that they burn. It's one of the parks in Saigon. You see here the streets, I don't know what you can see on the film, but crowded streets in Saigon. This is another thing. On the streets of Saigon, you can get anything that you wanted. If you couldn't get it at your quartermaster, you can get it in the streets of Saigon. If you couldn't get socks, you couldn't get whatever it was, they had them there. And there's just some of the temples that were there in the area. Some tanks here that were getting ready to go out. And this way, some live entertainment we had. Guys always got to have entertainment, no matter what. And here's where I received the Bronze Star, Colonel Wevesynski. This was in the newspaper here. And here's getting ready to go out on guard duty. This is to give you an idea of some land. Some place you have jungle. Here near the beach, it was more like desert area. You can see the desert road going into the mountains. This was a dog that we had. And once just some more of the Vietnamese. The Chinook helicopter was an AK-47 that I got, but I couldn't take it home because it was illegal. But anyway, I had it there for a while. And this is my buddy Tony Spinelli from Rome that I met. We went on R&R together. And these were the type of uniforms you wore when you were there most of the time. Those were for that environment. And this was R&R. This was in Taipei, which known as Formosa, which is A lot of controversy going on between China and them. There's some more. This is the guy that made that Christmas card that I showed you earlier. Here's the Red Cross girl. See, it was party time. They put on civilian clothes, just like you see in MASH. And this was Mike Kelly. He was an artist. In fact, he was out in San Francisco after. This is the South China Sea, because that was when the AmeriCal Division behind us was the South China Sea. These are more of the guys that we worked with. There's a buddy of mine, Paul Hutchinson. He lives in Boston. And here's some of the Vietnamese money. Here we had MPC, military payment certificates. You couldn't use the United States greenbacks in Vietnam because then they could take them on the open market and use them. So we would receive this money, and only GIs could spend this. It was like monopoly money. And this was the Vietnamese money that they had there. And as I said, there was the Christmas card that they designed. There we are in our hippie outfit. And this when I came home. And then after this, when I first started teaching after 1971, when I came back from the Army. But just a little idea of what it was like.
Would you mind if we got a shot of the uniform?
Oh, yeah.
Let's take a look at this date. 30 years since I took this thing out. This was all dry cleaned. I looked at it last night. It looked like it got a little wrinkled over the years just hanging in the closet. But that's the one thing. These are the ribbons, and they represent the medals that you received. And then after I was an acting sergeant when I was in Vietnam when I left, which means they gave me the job to do as a sergeant. I was able to wear the sergeant stripes, but I didn't get the pay. And then when I came back, I went back to a Spec 4. Because over there, they didn't have the pay rank there for you. And then this, on your right sleeve, you wear your combat division. This was the 1st Infantry Division, the first one I was with. Then this badge is the one where I was in Fort Knox for 3 months when I came back guarding the gold, so your gold was safe for 3 months when I was there. And then, of course, blue background here is the infantry, the right cross rifles. And this was the dress uniform of the time.